Thanks for coming out, everybody. Welcome. I guess you're all ready to start gardening. So, shall we get started? Postage stamp, square foot gardening, companion or container planting, whatever you call your small garden space, you can get big results with some thoughtful planning and the right plants. There are at least 3 samples of these gardens in this slide. My talk today will touch on the essentials of small space gardening, including prep work, placement of your garden, arrangement of plants, cost, and some suggested plants to use. The details that you want to focus on for your own garden can easily be found in a variety of sources. Your own home bookcase, plant and seed catalogs, the OSU website, bookstores, and of course your local library are ideal places to begin, not only for information, but for monthly talks they host just like this one. Please note, when you do your research on the internet, make sure you get research-based information by typing site:/.edu, followed by the word or words you are searching for, as in this example of the top 2 lines on the slide, and there is an example of what will come up after that. So we're going to assume we have new gardeners here today and/or gardeners who are new to small spaces. So I'll begin with the basics and work up from there. Starting small can be a good place to begin. That baby agrees with me. Or even if you're scaling back, because that way you will be more successful and not get overwhelmed. The idea is to strategically place vegetables in your garden so it will yield amounts of produce in a minimum amount of space. So, how many of you have or had a parent, a grandparent, a relative, or friend who gardened with you when you were young? Oh look, whoa. Okay, chances are they are the ones who planted the seeds in you to pursue gardening. So there's my grandma and me. I know she was the sweetest person. I received my love of gardening from my maternal grandmother, and I say received because it was truly a gift. She had a small lot in the city, but she made terrific use of it. She planted vegetables and flowers around the exterior of her house, along the side of her detached garage, adjacent to her house, behind the garage where she placed a rock garden with a fish pond, and along the back border of her yard, basically everywhere a flower, a vegetable, or a fish would grow. She grew rhubarb in one corner of the backyard, and she had strawberries in a sunnier spot from which she made strawberry rhubarb pies. She even had room for a peach tree for her peach pies. Those pies were the best. I spent a lot of time in her yard helping in her garden and in her kitchen making and eating those pies. One of my first gardens was grown by following her advice along with the instructions in a little book I found called Postage Stamp Gardening, similar to the one on this slide. That was several decades ago, but it was possibly my favorite personal garden, even though I was so new at it. I took a small strip of sunny lawn along the side of my house, removed all the grass, and turned over the soil. I planted and watered according to the book and excitedly watched my garden take off. Beginner that I was, I let my zucchini grow to mammoth proportions. Savvy gardeners know that zucchini are better picked when they are small, but I was hooked anyway. The plan in the book I used was to grow plants very close together so they could support each other one way or another. The beans I planted between my corn plants were ideal companions because beans don't mind some shade from the corn growing above them. The roots of the 2 plants occupy different levels in the soil, meaning they don't compete for water and nutrients, and the corn stalks supported the beans as a trellis would. Plus, the tendrils of the beans don't bother the corn. It all worked beautifully. My corn crop produced the most delicious ears of corn I have ever eaten because I ate them 15 minutes after they were picked. Who knew? This was a total win-win situation for my small space and my confidence in gardening. There are many very good scientific reasons to companion plant. The bean, like many legumes, forms a symbiotic relationship with special bacteria that forms nodules called nitrogen fixation bacteria. Then that's as scientific as I'm going to get. Which this takes the abundant nitrogen from the air and converts it into a soil-bound form, which is useful to corn, which requires a large amount of nitrogen. Native Americans knew that this process worked splendidly. They planted corn, beans, and squash together all in one big jumbled bed and called this much revered arrangement Three Sisters. This was ingenious because each crop fits together with the others like a piece of a puzzle. The beans and corn grow tall, and the squash plants grow low and wide around the base of the corn and the beans, preventing both weeds and evaporation of soil moisture. The Native Americans attributed great cultural and spiritual meaning to the Three Sisters, as these plants were central to their diets. The European settlers received this method in turn from the Native Americans and even borrowed the name for their own Three Sisters gardens, which we still call them today. If you choose, these three plants are good ones for you to start with. Modern science can now tell us that eaten together, corn and beans have all the amino acids of a complete protein, making them a full meal. And the squash pitches in with her extra minerals, vitamins, and with some added sweetness, a true gift of the gods. And there's your new diet. First things first, you want to consult your family. You will want to discuss what you and your family like to eat, and therefore what you will plant, leaving room for additional plants you want to try. Getting your family or a friend in on the first stages of your garden has its benefits. Free help and free food. Plus, it's always nice to have someone to share the fruits of your labors. Spend some time thinking about how you cook and how your family eats. Does your family like salads, pasta with sauces, or soups and stews? Based on this, you can easily choose your plants and find specific information on them in many handy and helpful sources. It's a good idea to keep a notebook. There are many such things on the market to guide you in this, or you can use any notebook you have at home. You can always assign this job to a helper who may not want to get their hands dirty, but who won't mind keeping track of the vegetable varieties you want to plant, and make other notes and sketches. Even though buying your plants and getting them in the ground is the fun part, you need to make a plan before you begin. This is where you do your research. As I learned from my early experience, your plan is the blueprint of your garden and will keep any mistakes to a minimum. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, so a good plan gives you an idea of where to plant your garden, what to plant in it, how much space to allocate, what shape it should be, and when to plant. Meaning there are some vegetables needing to be planted in early spring, some planted in mid-spring, and others in late spring. Some gardeners simply draw a rough sketch and go from there. Others draw their plan to scale. For example, 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch on the paper is equal to 1 foot in the garden. This allows for an accurate layout. Graph paper is good because it is proportional and allows you to see how much space you actually have. Or if you prefer to make your garden plan online, there are websites to help you design your garden. You start your research with Garden Planner after site:/edu. Some of the seed catalogs also offer planners. If you need assistance, contact our helpline at the Extension office. Then you can go directly to your pre-selected garden area with your drawing or graph paper and start marking off the bed with string and stakes. We'll go to selecting your garden in a minute. Garden catalogs and websites are good inspiration for deciding what to plant. There are numerous vegetable, flower, and herb companies that offer a wide variety of seed selections. Many of the printed catalogs offer planting tips, and some even offer recipes. So sending for some is a great pre-planning exercise to do. It can also offer you new and different varieties that you may want to try. Next, make sure you plan adequate space for all plants in your garden so that you will know how far apart they need to be. This is an important step because just like people, plants come in all different shapes and sizes. A carrot takes a lot less space than a cabbage. When mature, plants should just touch one another on all sides. Winter squash, for instance, requires at least 12 inches between plant centers. This means that if you have a 5 by 5 foot garden, you can have 5 squash on one side of it, preferably to grow up a vertical support. You can count the number of plants or even seeds that you are going to use and space them out in your drawing. This helps greatly when you purchase your plants and when you transplant your seedlings, which you can start in a sunny window inside the house a month or so before planting time. This is great fun for kids and adults alike. However you make a plan, do save it for reference next year. If you are happy with your garden placement at the end of the growing season, you've got the same plot and a plan waiting for you for the next growing season. You will, however, want to rotate your plants each year, which helps you keep your soil healthy. So, what size to make your garden? This is mostly up to you and the space you have available. Decide on how much time you want to spend per day or week in your garden. Going smaller to begin with will keep you from overplanting, so you won't end up with 500 zucchinis or hundreds of tomatoes to do something with when they're ripened. If you work and/or have kids, you may have only an hour or two a week to spend in the garden. This is fine. The less time you have to spend gardening, the smaller you will want to make your garden. But you can still enjoy plenty of veggies and have fun doing it. The beauty of a smaller garden is that you won't find yourself spending more time and/or money than you really want keeping up with it. A good size to begin with is a 4 by 4 foot or 5 by 6 foot plot, also called square foot gardening, with divisions equaling a square foot, hence the name. Just so you know, a 5 by 5 foot bed may produce up to 200 pounds of vegetables, and that's a good amount of produce. Garden shapes. You don't have to limit yourself to squares or rectangles. You can choose any shape you wish, a triangle, circle, kidney shape, you name it. Give vegetables their basic requirements and they could care less about the shape of the garden they're in, where to put your postage stamp gardening or not. The next thing to do in planning your garden is to decide where to put it. It should be in full sun for most vegetables, on flat ground with good air movement to help avoid disease in your plants. Once you're sure of the site, do a soil test before you make any changes to your soil. You will want to know how much fertilizer and so forth that you will need for your garden size. Again, information very easily acquired from your friendly local garden extension service, that's us, or from a table in a book or the internet. It costs a small amount and your garden will thank you for it. If you do that now, you'll get the results in time to buy compost or make some at home and get the advised nutrients to enhance your existing soil if it needs it. Most vegetables need a minimum of 6 hours of direct sunlight every day. A spot like this is where you want to put your garden. Warm weather vegetables such as tomatoes, squash, and peppers can never get too much sun. Cool weather vegetables such as lettuce and cabbage will tolerate a little shade. If the sun is too hot for some cool weather veggies, you can add some shade to your garden, but it's not so easy to add sun. Your plants don't really care where they grow as long as you give them the correct amounts of fertile soil, enough water, and the required sun they need. You also want to place your garden near a water outlet and close to your tool storage for obvious reasons. Where not to plant. You want to place your garden bed at least 20 feet away from shallow-rooted trees such as elms, maples, and poplars. Not only does the foliage of these trees block out the sun, but their roots will compete for water and nutrients, which in turn produce less than ideal results for you. A general rule to remember is that tree roots take mineral nutrients from the soil in a circle as wide as or wider than the tree's farthest reaching branches, and plants will not do as well within this circle. If you think about it, you really don't see vegetable gardens under trees. Neither do you want to put your garden in a low area that will hold standing water or near a downspout, where the force from a sudden rain might wash out some of your plants. That would be very sad. And here's your public service announcement. It reads, this 811 is the National Call Before You Dig phone number. Anyone who plans to dig should call 811 or go to our state center's website. I tried it, just dial 811. A few business days before you dig to request that the approximate location of buried utilities be marked with paint or flag so that you don't unintentionally dig into an underground utility line, which could be very shocking. All right, moving on. What and when to plant your garden. It's tempting to purchase plants when you first see them for sale in mid-spring. But seasoned gardeners know that even though local greenhouses and plant suppliers begin offering plants around Mother's Day, that is too early for planting in the ground in our area. We've all seen appreciable snowfalls in May, and you certainly don't want to see your newly planted garden under 6 inches of snow. So you must wait until the end of May, sometimes even later. Call your OSU Extension office and we'll keep you updated. However, you can purchase seeds, that's fun, and start them while you're waiting to plant outside. Go ahead and get them and some good soil in small containers such as a cardboard egg carton, which is ideal, and put them in your sunroom or a sunny spot inside. I like to use the plastic containers with the see-through lids that come from restaurants. These act as mini greenhouses. Whatever container you decide to use, make sure that it has holes in it in the bottom to allow for good drainage. If you want to buy them, I've already seen seed starting containers on the store shelves. You can also spend this time waiting to plant, deciding on how to enhance your soil if it needs it. Some things that will influence your choice of plants are the size of your garden versus the size of plants when they're mature. There are many varieties that have been specifically selected to grow in small spaces. This is important. You can also decide if you will use companion planting, that is the Three Sisters method, and or some succession planting, which is just a fancy term for planting one crop right after another one that has been harvested, also called the very technical and obvious term second planting. By definition, this is staggered planting of the same or different plants in your garden so that they ripen in successive order. This will allow you to harvest continuously throughout the season and will extend your growing season and or allow you to grow different varieties. There are several plants that should be planted early, such as lettuce and spinach. They will be finished before the heat of summer starts, so after you harvest them, you can use the vacated space for your sun-loving plants. After you make your plant choices, you can then select the number of plants you need by checking a plant guide table, which I think we handed out, online or in a book. There is a reference page at the end of this talk, which is on the back of that you can refer to. If you enjoy canning or freezing vegetables, you can increase the number of plants recommended in the plant table to produce extra veggies for preserving, but you may need a second postage stamp garden. If you have enough room and space and time for this, go for it. Here are some planting guidelines that will help you obtain maximum results. Major vegetables such as tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants should be surrounded by secondary vegetables such as radishes and bush beans. You want to plant vegetables that mature quickly between those that mature more slowly in your small space. For instance, planting radishes in the same space in which you have planted tomatoes. Radishes will be ready for harvest 4 to 5 weeks before the tomato vines take over the space. Definitely go vertical within your garden as much as possible. This is great because it will make room for more plants. Plant your tallest crops on the north side to avoid shading the smaller ones. If you are lucky enough to have a wall or fence on or toward the north side of your property, you can use it to plant tall and vining vegetables such as tomatoes, squash, peas, and cucumbers. Somebody has put their entire garden on the wall. Plant on the south side of the wall for best sun, unless that side is in your neighbor's yard. or if they don't mind. Besides, you can always give them your giant zucchinis. Training plants to grow up fences, trellises, poles, or anything that will support them means they won't run all over your garden bed, which will crowd out other plants in a very short time. No fence, no problem. If you're going to grow corn, it must go at the north end also, and you can plant your beans or peas between the corn plants a couple of weeks or so later to climb up the corn. Place all of the other vegetables in descending order of size toward the south side of your garden. That way they all get equal sun. Here are just a couple of more interesting examples. One is on a wall, and one is on, I think it's a roof. At least they won't have a mole problem. I have no idea why that's up there, but it's very interesting. So most plants grow well together, but please take note that there are some that are not compatible with other plants. So be sure to check on that first. Onions, for example, will not only stunt the growth of some plants, but they will also affect the flavor of other vegetables in an oniony way. In addition to vegetables, it's always nice to tuck edible flowers and herbs into your postage stamp garden. Edible flowers can be used to add color and taste to your food. Example include pansies and violas, squash blossoms, bachelor's buttons, lavender buds, and marigold petals. There are other plants you can add that help repel certain insects who believe that you've planted your lovely garden just for them. For example, aromatic herbs such as garlic, chives, leeks, catnip, fennel, dill, cilantro will help to repel aphids. Some flowers attract butterflies, hummingbirds, bees, and other helpful friends to the garden to pollinate and protect vegetables, which many gardeners today are critically aware of. You will want to know which bugs, flying or otherwise, are good and bad for your garden. If you run out of space in your new garden and you are adventurous, leaf lettuce and Swiss chard make very nice flower bed edging. They will happily coexist together. However, if you intend to eat them, be careful not to use chemicals which kill insects and control disease in the garden where you have your edible crops. If you still need or want more space for a garden, a patio with enough sun can fit the bill. A container garden can be a very effective way to grow vegetables and herbs. This is also a good option for busy or older gardeners. Container gardens are very popular for patios and paved areas and are easy to maintain. The good news is that with the postage stamp method, a few containers can produce a large amount of food. So, cost and helpful hints. Consider that small gardens cost less than larger gardens in several ways. If you are careful, it can cost little to practically nothing. You might have much of what you need on hand already. Many of my tools come from garage and estate sales. One of my best finds a couple of years ago was the kneeling pad, like the one on the right side, that turns over to become a seat, that I bought for $5. I waited a long time for this find, and I was very happy when I did. An old red wagon also serves me well. Another find was a Rubbermaid two-wheeled cart, like that one, but not that one, that only put me back $6. That one was online for only $346. I tell my husband we have saved thousands of dollars by now. In my daughter's case, she comes over and scoops up double items I don't need. I'm just thrilled that she loves gardening as much as I do, and in return she accepts plants from my garden when I'm thinning them out. If you don't care for dirt under and around your nails from May until October, do invest in a good pair of gloves. In addition to what I have on the slide, you might want a lightweight, wide-brimmed hat, a kneeling pad, and or a low stool, maybe one on wheels, a garden vest, or a half apron with big pockets. A 5-gallon pail is also good for carrying things to the garden. These and a few other accessories such as a spade and a few hand tools will get you started. See what you already have on hand that will serve you well until you can justify spending more money or when it's garage sale season. It pays to start small with a modest amount of money the first year, and then decide how much you can afford and want to spend on equipping yourself and your garden as you go along. Buying things as you need them is a good rule of green thumb. And that's my talk for the day. I hope I've given you enough ideas and information to encourage you to start small, a small garden of your own. Besides food, you can get a lot of personal satisfaction from it. Happy gardening. Well, thank you. We can take some questions now. Back there.
Any good advice for inexpensive fencing for deer and raccoons?
Any good advice for inexpensive fencing for deer or raccoons? They know you're there, and they know exactly what you planted. Who has been successful with this in their own yard? Yeah.
Not the fencing so much, but we found out that the deer don't like jalapenos.
Deer don't like jalapenos.
So
I must be a deer.
we got to put a couple pots on the garden fence.
So they put pots along the garden fence. Good idea. Did you have another suggestion?
Chicken wire.
Chicken wire. They love running into that. They also know when you're not home. I mean, raccoons, we've caught moles. We have mole traps. We relocate animals. We're humane about it, but yeah, we want our food. Or just plant a little extra. They're going to eat some. You know, you're going to have the little bugs. They all know you're there, and they appreciate what you give them. So give them a little extra, and they'll save some for you. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. I just had a tree removed and they ground the stump. There's a lot of chips around there. Can I plant in there now, or do I have to wait for some kind of a period of time?
Okay, did you all hear that? She had a stump ground and she wants to know how soon she can plant. And I know we have a couple of landscaping guys here. Can you handle that question?
Yeah, the answer is absolutely not.
There you go, no. Thank you. So no. How long?
5 years.
Yeah, at least 1 year, probably more like 5.
So is that directly where the stump was or all around it? Because the roots are all there, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay.
Garden, container planting for you.
Yeah, I want to put pots on the area.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I have another question. When I have a container, you're making those raised beds. How deep you need for proper roots growth?
Well, that's a good question too. Fairly deep. What do you say? Like 1.5 at the most. You don't have to fill a whole container with 50 gallons of dirt because you won't be able to move it. You can check and see how deep a plant will grow. If you're growing carrots, they just want to be in the ground as long as they're going to get. Some roots are longer than others, but they'll go vertical. Anybody have a suggestion for that at all? I think that's about the best answer. Not a lot of dirt, but not too little. So again, I think you'd check the internet depending on your receptacle.
Well,
Yeah.
I saw an article about taking your old charcoal grill, I have one I don't use, and planting in there. So is that going to be deep enough?
Probably. Is it like 12 inches at least?
What's that?
Is it at least 12 inches? That gentleman wants to help you right there. Did you do this with your grill?
You drill holes in it.
Oh, yes.
Drill hole.
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Good luck with that. That'll be cute. Just turn it toward the south because it'll have a hood, right?
No,
And
it's just an open grill.
Oh, it's open. Okay. The hood's good if it's raining hard. Another question? Yes, in the back?
Yes, I always have a problem with tomatoes, whether it was in a garden or in a container. By the time you're ready to harvest, I guess it's blight that just kills the plant. Do you have any ideas what I can do about that?
Personally, there are a lot of people around here who grow tomatoes. I go to the garden markets. I have grown them. Some of them have just been volunteers in my dog's kennel. Apparently she ate a tomato. You want to plant them up. I think the higher the better. They get better sun, better air, which will keep disease off of them a little better. and just keep an eye on them. You fence them in. Those little fences, what are those wire things that you put in? They're always too short. You know, you need to tie those things to the eaves on the garage. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about soil, if you're starting a raised bed from nowhere and you don't have, you need to bring soil in?
Right. So the question is, if you're doing a raised bed and you're putting soil in, it's not from your yard, what's the best soil? I mean, I just would buy a good bag of soil, basically, and you don't have to enhance it. A lot of times it tells you on the bag what's in it. You do want to watch the ingredients in it, so you make sure it's for either flowers or vegetables, because they need different amounts of oxygen and nitrogen. You know, just use that. If you're in your ground, then you want to enhance it sometimes, depending on your soil test. And your soil test is key, because that's going to affect your produce. Yeah.
When's a good time in this area to start your seeds indoors?
So when is a good time in this area to start your seeds indoors? Now is probably too early. Yeah, they'll get too big or they'll just not make it. You'll have to, what do you say, sir?
Most of the seed packets say 6 to 8 weeks.
There you go. Read your seed packet. Unless somebody gave you seeds. I have random seeds in my house. I'll just throw them in a bed and see what comes up and then start transplanting. But yeah. Anything else, guys? Any other answers to that? Yes, Diane?
Generally in this area, May 15th is the date, doesn't necessarily mean it's safe to plant, but that's the date that we say in
May what?
Our zone.
May
15th.
May 15th.
You got a 50% chance
Can I give you this?
that
They
you...
probably can't
They
hear
can't
you.
hear me?
Nope.
Anyway, May 15th in this area in our zone is generally when they say that you have a 50% chance of not, or yes, you will, have a freeze. And it's that freeze that you want to avoid. So if you count backwards 6 weeks from May 15th, that gives you some type of an estimate on when you can start. If the packet says start them 6 weeks before you want to plant them. And it doesn't hurt to have them in the house a little bit longer if you want to add yourself. You can watch the forecast for sure as you get closer to that May 15th date. But it doesn't hurt really if you're taking good care and your seeded plants look good to leave them in the container another week, which might not be a bad idea in this area. Yeah.
Yeah, fellow Master Gardener, I've got a lot of support here from my Master Gardener friends. Yes, sir.
Okay, 2 statements. One is, I moved here 50 years ago, and the zone for this area is in Zone 5. Now it's Zone 7A, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, we have moved. I didn't know it was in 7 already.
Yeah, 7A. And the other thing, if like your tomato seedlings you're starting the tomato seeds inside, if they get too tall, when you transplant them, just stick them down further.
Yeah.
They don't care if
That's true.
their roots are, buried.
That's very true. I've heard to plant them horizontally, like a good part of the plant with all the nodes on it, right? And then you can have this much sticking up, and all of those roots are going to grow out of that stem you put underground. How are we doing? Yes, Carol?
Mention hardening off. If you start inside, you've got to harden off your plants before you.
So acclimate them to going outside, in other words. Right. Don't take them from your toasty warm house into a 45-degree temperature. I personally hate that. And I think plants are probably weaker than I am. Yes. All good? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate everything. Thank you for coming. Appreciate